How to communicate with an avoidant without pushing them away further. My name's Clayton Olson, and if you're in a relationship or connection with an avoidant right now, I know that it can be crazy making. And if you have anxiety bubbling through your system and you feel really dysregulated, maybe you're learning about attachment styles for the first time and you're thinking, God, this is just hell that I'm going through, and it's all because this person's pulling away from me. I hope that this video can help you get a little bit of a better handle on what's actually going on and help you understand the rules that this person might be operating by as an avoidant that are very foreign to you. And as you start to understand these rules, my hope is that you will be able to find some peace and some clarity and really get some practical steps from this video of how to communicate into this space and call this person back into connection in a way where they are ready and willing to maybe step in at a deeper level and at least be more transparent about what's happening in their inner world, so the two of you can have clarity about whether this connection is actually going to last and move forward into deeper commitment if that's possible. A couple things here. First, my name's Clayton. I am a relationship coach who has been working with people for the last 12 years on the deeper drivers behind their most painful experiences in love and relationships, helping them rewrite those deeper drivers so that they can begin to live a life they love and create love that lasts. And I'm excited about this video because avoidants are a often very misunderstood bunch of people. I know I was an avoidant. I'm a recovered one now through therapy, coaching, communication, being with my wife, learning how to be in the fire of intimacy and be transparent about what's going on for me. It took a lot of learning. One thing I can say for a lot of avoidants out there is they're hyper-independent people. They know how to regulate themselves as individuals outside of a relationship. When they get into a connection, especially if it's intimate and deep, they can get a little squirrely. And it's not because you're doing something wrong necessarily. It's not because there's something wrong with your inherent worth. It's because you're running into a lack of capacity on their part that you might internalize as some type of self-blame. And so when you're dealing with avoidant, they might seem like very competent people out in the world, and they're able to create things, they're able to be on their own, perhaps they're charming, and there's ways in which they can communicate with you in the beginning stages that are transparent and open, but then suddenly you get to this place where the dynamic shifts. So how do you call these people back into connection? Well, it doesn't happen from remaining in your own anxiety on the other end of the spectrum. If they're avoidant and you are anxious, you can't call them into secure attachment, becoming more secure, growing into more secure by you not doing any work on yourself, right? And that's not to blame you. That's not to say you need to change yourself because there's nothing wrong with them. It's saying that this is an opportunity for you to become a more empowered, resourceful, detached, present, grounded individual who is more comfortable with uncertainty and the natural level of risk that comes with opening your heart to another human being. And if you can see that the riches that you gain by being in relationship with somebody that might be avoidant is not all hell and unpredictability, but rather there is a spiritual, psycho-emotional path that you get to walk to find your own center in a way that maybe you haven't your entire life, then you might be able to approach this time with more curiosity, more excitement, a little bit more playfulness, and a way in which you can start to see the infinite game that you're in, right? So rather than looking for an endpoint and just trying to get security and being uncomfortable with uncertainty and letting the worst parts of you come out, you can start to step into a more exalted version of you and do the deeper work on yourself. Regardless of whether this person stays in your life or not, you walk away transformed. You walk away being able to operate at a far higher level of connection to self than maybe you've ever had in the past. And any patterns of self-abandonment might be there, where you leave yourself behind, where you forget your worth, where you forget your words, where you're completely outcome dependent. All of that starts to dissolve away. And I'm not saying that's an easy path. I'm not pointing to this and saying, hey, this is easy. But I am saying there is so much opportunity in this, especially when you can transcend the place of making this person an enemy and just attaching to your innocence in the situation, thinking that avoidants are evil and they just ruin people's lives. I see comments like that in these videos. And listen, I understand that there are people out there that do things and they lie and they say mean things. And I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the pattern of avoidance. Malicious action is not married to avoidance, because avoidance is oftentimes a lack of capacity. It is a ignorance around relational dynamics. And the more that you can operate from a innocent until proven guilty mindset in this, the better off you're going to be. As I go into the structure of how to hold yourself in this, I've touched on this organically in the introduction of this video, and I'm hoping that already what we're doing is we're pointing to the top of the mountain, we're pointing to the place that you can go that can already start to help you feel more at peace here and realize that the real prize is you finding you in this, not you getting back together with them, not you controlling them or getting them to act in a way that protects and insulates you from your anxiety, but you transcending out of your anxiety into personal power to be able to inspire them to also heal and step up with you if they are the right person. There's no guarantees in life, but we can provide an invitation for people to step up and do this deeper work by how we show up and who we are being. So, as we dive into this, let's talk about the first thing. I do not recommend reaching out to them from a place of you being dysregulated, emotionally dysregulated, meaning you're struggling with your own capacity to be with this situation. The first thing to do is to come back to a place of how do I connect with myself? How do I find my own internal resourcefulness? Maybe you do that through breath work. Maybe you do that through connecting with friends. Perhaps you do that through hobbies and passions and things that bring joy to you. And then from that place of resourcefulness, you reach out to them. Because human beings are like tuning forks. And if you are dysregulated in your anxiety, what ends up happening is as you step into connection with them, you will trigger and vibrate your anxiety into them. And their anxiety looks different. It's not looking for closeness. It's actually looking for isolation and distance so that they don't feel overwhelmed. You must learn to not self-abandon to stay in connection with an avoidant. And to move into secure is to communicate from a place of overflow. You're communicating from a place where the energy that you bring is one where you're not attached to the outcome and that you have found your okayness. You have found your well-being exactly where you're at. Now, if you find yourself in this dysregulated space, this is the time to actually take a step back from the connection, find your center, do your practices, look at your beliefs, talk to a coach, talk to somebody that can help you ground in yourself, because then when you move back into connection, as you are connected to yourself, you invite a space for them to connect with you as well. Because the final point on this too is that an avoidant can feel when you are taking from them. And so if you are in a place of dysregulation, the energy that you bring to them will be one of, I'm trying to get something from you. An avoidance had people, at least one primary caregiver in their early childhood, taking from them in some way. And their protective strategy is to pull away so they can't be taken from. So the more that you can be secure and not take from them and give from overflow like we were talking about, the more you make it safe for them to come back into connection with you. So if you're now in the process of reaching out to the person, what tactically does that look like? You must contain the scope. So what that means is to avoid catastrophizing the situation. One of the things to know about avoidance is that they have a small fuse for large emotions. Unlike a secure person who might be able to give you reassurance if you tend to go into catastrophizing about a situation and give you the reassurance that everything's okay. An avoidant, especially if you're in the beginning stages of dating them, they just might get blown out if your emotions are too large. So when you communicate, specifically what this looks like is you want to avoid saying things to the effect of, you're always like this, I don't even know what we are anymore, do you even want to see me anymore? I haven't heard from you in days. Something to the effect of that, where there is an accusation in there and there is a way in which you're jumping to a conclusion that has a whole bunch of emotional weight behind it. Because what that will do is it will just continue to push the avoidant away. And if they were thinking about already needing space, they're just going to need more space to process that. The more that you can process that on your own in these stages and be able to be with a friend, coach, talk to yourself, get out of your own way, center yourself, and then come to them with a clear request, the better chance that they will have the capacity to come back into communication with you, and then for the two of you to be able to talk about the impact and get more clear on what's actually going on. So what that might look like is just saying something to the effect of, hey, I've been feeling off. Are you around on Thursday at 2 p.m. to chat? So you're making a clear, time-bound request. You're also revealing how you're feeling right now, and you're not putting any pressure on them, and you're also being very clear with what you want. So you're not leaving it up to interpretation. You are taking your shot at connecting with them, and you're making it very clear of how to do that. This is super important. You want to avoid making any type of character assassinations against yourself or against them in these communications, which can be very easy to do because you're hurt. I get it. It makes a lot of sense that we might end up reacting that way. But oftentimes when we communicate from that place, we end up making things worse and regretting it later when we come back to our emotional center. The next piece I have for you here is to remember that patterning is not personal. Patterning is not personal. So what is happening with the avoidant and their lack of communication or being in communication with you in a way that is meeting your expectations is their own lack of resourcefulness. They might be overwhelmed with something in their life right now. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're overwhelmed with you. They might be heads down, taking care of business, and what happens is they get tunnel vision and they go into their hole and they execute and get things done, and they're not even aware that there's a problem. So the more that you can assume and take a innocent until proven guilty mindset in this, like we talked about earlier, the more that you can come from curiosity and assume ignorance rather than malicious intent. That is key. So innocent until proven guilty. What this does, it allows you to reclaim your power as well, and to approach this with a more lighthearted manner where you realize you might be in relationship with somebody where your relational IQ is higher than theirs. You might have more access to your emotions, more ability to reveal what's happening for you internally. And what you're with is somebody who might be stunted in that area specifically, but they are very competent in other areas. Don't take what's happening personally. Their avoidance is not a reflection of your self-worth. Their silence does not mean that you're too much. It could just be that they've got something going on in their life, and you encouraging them or asking them at some point to reveal a little bit more about what's happening for them internally is a very clear request, and you might learn more about what's going on that can help you then settle your nervous system and brace for these types of disconnects to happen in the future with a little bit more understanding and a little bit more trust that you will come back together again. And remember this, here is the gift in being in connection with an avoidant. Avoidance will unconsciously invite you to stop overfunctioning, because you'll notice that when you're with them, you want to overfunction. And actually to call them in a greater connection with you is to stop overfunctioning. They will call you into and challenge you to learn how to self-soothe in your relationship with them. They will challenge you to become a more embodied person who can be more deeply resourced on the inside rather than relying on the outside world to give you the necessary resources that you need. They will call you back into deeper connection with yourself if you answer that call appropriately versus deteriorate into your worst self while you are with them. And this is truly a place where you get to learn how to detach in your dating and relationship life, where you are able to stay more committed and connected to yourself and start to detach from the outcomes of things happening around you and lean into the mystery of what's going on. And the piece that I also want to say in this is, listen, this video is not an invitation for you to stay in something longer than you need to. And what you might need to have in this scenario also is something that is time-bound for yourself. A commitment and clear idea of what is the container that you're willing to operate in, where if you're waiting too long, you end up betraying yourself. We can end up building a lot of resentment towards the other person when they're not providing the container and they're not coming back in a connection. But my question to you is, how long are you willing to be in this and practice these concepts that I'm speaking to before you turn against yourself? And what that requires of you is it requires you to be an agent of your own life and to protect your heart and to know when it is time to walk away and not to just stay in something too long for the sake of growth, because there comes a point where the returns are diminishing. So that could be 30 days, that could be 60 days where maybe you guys are in this period of redefinition of your relationship, if it is because of a rupture and they need space, or if it's a small rupture where there's just a little bit of space or a lack of communication, maybe you're giving yourself a week or two. These are all reasonable in my opinion. That would be what works for me, but you've got to determine what works for you in this. And again, this is all inviting you into a place of self-mastery, of self-agency, so that when you are in communication with this type of person, you've got principles that you're operating by, and you are really being your own best friend, and you have your own back. So in closing, avoidants aren't broken, and neither are you. There's just an opportunity for, in some ways, the opposite side of the same coin, of two people to come together into deeper, secure attachment by really working on the relationship that you have with yourself, by learning to trust yourself more deeply, by learning to trust others more deeply, and by learning to trust life more deeply as well. The more secure that you become in this, the more that you invite the people around you to heal. And that's not by fixing them, but by more deeply anchoring in yourself. Now, I've got a guide that I want to give you. It's called the Secure Relationship Blueprint. So if you are on the anxious side of things in your dating and relationships, download this guide. It is 5 beliefs, 5 unconscious beliefs that we often are running in the background that have us chasing love, staying in situations too long, or discounting ourselves. And there's a reframe to a secure belief, to where when you can look at these things and begin to relate to them as mantras, say them daily, they will begin to help you start to see through the lens of secure attachment, the lens of truly trusting yourself and trusting life. So download that guide. The link is in the description below, and I'm also going to link it in a pinned comment for you to check it out. Leave a comment, ask a question, let me know how this video landed with you, and if you haven't joined the community, subscribe to the channel, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.